There's a moment that happens every single year. Someone, maybe at work, maybe at a dinner, maybe just in passing, finds out you prefer winter. And their face does something. It shifts. Not dramatically. Just enough. A small furrow. A half smile that's more confused than warm. Like you just told them you enjoy sitting in traffic or reading instruction manuals for fun. And then comes the question. Usually not asked out loud, but written clearly across their expression. What happened to you? Because in the world most people live in, loving winter is not a preference. It's a malfunction. It's a personality bug that needs explaining. Summer is the reward. Summer is freedom and life and everything worth having. And if you don't feel that way, if the first cold morning of October lands in your chest like relief instead of dread, then something, somewhere in your wiring went wrong. Except here's what I want to tell you, it didn't. Not only is there nothing wrong with you, there is a growing body of psychological, neurological, and environmental research that suggests people who genuinely prefer winter are operating with a specific kind of self-awareness, a specific relationship to their own nervous system, a specific cognitive style. That most people, the summer people, the sunshine people, have never had to develop. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why you feel what you feel when the temperature drops and the sky goes that particular shade of steel gray. Not just, I like the cold, the real reason underneath it. The one you've never quite been able to say out loud. Let's go. Them Chapter 1. It's not that you love cold, it's that you've been surviving heat. Let me make a distinction that almost nobody makes. And it changes everything. Most people assume that winter preference is an aesthetic choice, like preferring blue over red or mountains over beaches. A matter of taste, a personality quirk. But for a significant number of people, it's not that simple. Because what they feel about winter isn't primarily attraction, it's relief. And those two things, attraction and relief, are pointing at completely different psychological realities. Attraction means you're drawn towards something. Relief means you've been under pressure, and it's finally released. So when that first cold front rolls in and something in you loosens, something you didn't even fully realize was clenched, what you're experiencing is not a preference for cold. It's the lifting of a physiological load you've been carrying for months. Because here's what summer actually is. Stripped of the cultural mythology. Real heat, not a warm bath, not a pleasant afternoon. Real sustained. Summer heat is a physiological stressor. Your body is working constantly just to maintain a stable internal temperature. That's not nothing. That's energy. That's cortisol. That's your nervous system running hotter than it wants to, longer than it's designed to, the sweating through your clothes by 8 a.m., the low-grade headache that shows up around 2 p.m. without warning and never really leaves, the specific irritability of heat. That particular mood where you don't have a target but desperately need one. The sleep that deteriorates incrementally through July and August until you're waking up in the gray pre-dawn hours feeling like you barely rested at all, and underneath all of it, the bright, unfiltered, relentless light. If you are even mildly sensitive to sensory input, strong light is not energizing, it's drilling. Summer people thrive inside all of this. And genuinely, good for them. That is not sarcasm. Some nervous systems are built for high stimulation and warmth, and they genuinely bloom inside it. But if you have spent summers feeling overstimulated, irritable without cause, vaguely guilty about not enjoying what you're supposed to enjoy, then the arrival of cold air in autumn is not a mood. It is oxygen. It is your nervous system exhaling for the first time in months, and you've been calling that liking winter when what it actually is your body coming home. Chapter 2. The condition they don't put on bumper stickers, reverse SAD. The summer depression nobody talks about. Most people have heard of seasonal affective disorder, the winter blues, the clinical depression that tracks with short days and low light. It gets covered every November in every magazine and wellness newsletter in existence. What almost nobody talks about is the other direction. In 1984, psychiatrist Norman Rosenthal formally described as SAD in the medical literature. It was groundbreaking work, but within 5 years, by 1989, Rosenthal had already identified something else, a summer pattern, a recognized clinical variant where extended daylight, heat, and high sensory stimulation triggered genuine depressive episodes. Anxiety spikes, disrupted sleep, and a constellation of symptoms that can make summer months genuinely difficult to get through. It's called reverse SAD, summer pattern, or summer pattern SAD, or summer depression. The terminology varies. What doesn't vary is the reality of the people experiencing it. It's less studied than its winter counterpart. It gets far less media coverage. It doesn't fit the dominant cultural story about what sunshine is supposed to do to human beings. But it's real. It's documented. And for the people living inside it, every summer is not a season to enjoy. It's a season to survive. If that sentence landed somewhere specific in your body, if something in you recognized it rather than just understood it, I want you to pay attention to that. Because what we call preferring winter sometimes has a clinical dimension that deserves acknowledgement, not dismissal. You are not dramatic. You are not weak. You are not broken. You may simply have a nervous system that responds to a particular set of environmental conditions. And summer is not it. Chapter 3. The tax nobody lists. In the brochure Why Winter Feels Like Freedom here is something that gets almost no discussion in the conversation about seasons and psychology. Summer doesn't just bring heat and light. Summer brings obligation, the rooftop bar invitations that appear on your calendar without your consent, the group trips that get floated in a group chat, and suddenly you're the one who has to explain why you're hesitating. The office barbecue, the weekend plans, the constant, relentless cultural pressure that says, the sun is out, therefore your time belongs to other people. There's a whole unwritten social contract embedded in summer. Good weather means you owe the world your presence. You owe it enthusiasm. You owe it plans. Staying home is not rest. It's waste. It's misusing a resource. It's opting out of life. And if you decline, you're not just making a personal choice. You're making a statement. You become the difficult one, the anti-social one, the one with something to prove. Winter quietly revokes all of this. The invitations thin out. The rooftops close. The city's social metabolism slows. And suddenly, without having to refuse anything or explain anything or disappoint anyone, your evenings are yours again. For a particular kind of person, that's not winter's downside. That's the entire point of winter. And I want to be careful here, because this gets misread constantly. This isn't about disliking people. Some of the warmest, most socially generous humans alive genuinely prefer cold weather and shorter days. What they struggle with is the compulsory version of socializing. The kind that arrives whether you wanted it or not, delivered by the season like junk mail you didn't subscribe to. Winter is the unsubscribe button. You still go out. You still connect. You still laugh and stay too late over dinner and have the conversations that matter. You just do it on purpose. Not because the weather made it socially mandatory. Research published in 2015 by psychologist Shigehiro Oishi, found that introverted individuals consistently preferred enclosed, secluded environments and reported measurably higher well-being inside them. Winter does exactly this to the world. It closes the landscape down. It creates enclosure. It narrows the visible world to something smaller, quieter, more manageable. The sensory load of being alive in public just recedes. For people whose nervous systems run at the higher end of sensitivity, that recession isn't deprivation, it's calibration. Chapter 4. The permission. You've been waiting for why winter is the only season that lets you rest. Without guilt, I want to go deeper than the introvert framing here. 2000 little tidy. Because it's a little too tidy and the reality underneath is more interesting. There's a subset of winter lovers who aren't particularly introverted at all. They're not shy. They're not antisocial. They function perfectly well in groups and meetings and crowded rooms. What they share is something different, something harder to name. A very specific relationship with permission. Modern life runs on performance, productivity, visibility, momentum. The relentless argument that you should be optimizing, growing, achieving, doing. And summer amplifies every single layer of this pressure. The long days feel like a moral statement, like the light itself is making an argument. You have no excuse. Look how much time you have. What are you doing with it? Even leisure in summer has to look effortful. The hike, the swim, the outdoor workout at 7 a.m., the Instagram story that proves you left the house and did something worthy of the daylight you were given. There's a quiet guilt that lives inside a sunny Saturday spent doing nothing, because every hour of daylight feels borrowed, and you're being watched to see how well you're using it. Winter cancels that debt. The darkness comes early, and with it, an implicit cultural permission to slow down. The cold gives you a reason to stay in that doesn't require explanation. The world, for once, stops making arguments about what you should be doing with your time. For people who are chronically hard on themselves, who have spent years unable to rest without justification, unable to be still without the anxiety that they're falling behind. Winter is the only season that hands them a reason for free, external permission to simply be a human being, not a productivity metric, not a project, not someone whose value is measured in output and momentum, just a person existing slowly in a quiet room while it's dark outside. And here's the part that cuts deepest. Most people who feel this way can't fully articulate it. When you ask them why they love winter, they say things like, "I just like the cold," or "I prefer staying in," because the real sentence, the one running underneath, feels too vulnerable to say. The real sentence is, "I feel less guilty existing slowly when the world looks like this." If that sentence found something in you, if it didn't just inform you, but recognized you, then you now understand something about yourself that might take years of therapy to fully surface in other contexts. That's not a small thing. Finn, Chapter 5. The cognitive style winter rewards why winter. People see differently. There's one more dimension to this, and it's the one I find most fascinating. People who love winter often describe it in terms that sound almost meditative. The specific silence after heavy snowfall. Not just quiet, but absorbed quiet, the way sound gets swallowed by the landscape. The color of light at 4 p.m. in December, that particular blue-gray that lives in the 15 minutes just before dark, which is genuinely one of the stranger and more beautiful things you can see if you've ever stopped to look at it, the smell of cold air. The weight of a heavy coat, the feeling of stepping outside into darkness at 6 p.m. and finding it restful instead of sad. These are not small sensory details. Noticing them requires a specific kind of attention, one that's oriented toward depth rather than breadth, toward absorption rather than scanning. The cognitive style that finds meaning in the slower, quieter, more easily overlooked corner of experience is a specific one. Psychologists sometimes describe it as high absorption, a trait associated with deep aesthetic sensitivity, strong imaginative capacity, and a tendency to become genuinely immersed in whatever holds your attention. People high in this trait don't just listen to music, they disappear into it. They don't just read books, the world around them stops existing for the duration. Summer is loud. Summer is foreground. Summer is constant, bright, high-contrast stimulation that rewards scanning attention, the wide-angle lens that catches everything at once. Winter is a telephoto lens. It narrows. It goes deep. It rewards the person who notices what most people walk past. And for the cognitive style that's wired that way, that processes experience with a kind of depth and sustained focus that other people sometimes find puzzling. Winter isn't just preferable. It's native. It's the environment where that particular mind finally feels like it's operating on the right settings. Chapter 6. Getting your face back winter as identity. Not just season summer comes with a costume, not a metaphorical one, an actual performance. The social version of you. The active version. The one with plans and outdoor enthusiasm and availability and momentum. The one who says yes to things and shows up with energies and looks like they're living their best life because the algorithm, the culture, and everyone around them has decided that this is what a person living well looks like in July. Some people wear that costume naturally. For others, it's labor. Real labor. Not just exhausting, identity distorting. The kind of sustained performance where you're not just tired at the end of it. You've lost track, slightly, of who you actually are when no one's watching. Winter gives you your actual face back, the version that exists at home. In your own rhythm. In the clothes you'd actually choose if comfort were the only variable. In the hours you'd actually keep if no one expected you before 10 a.m., the version of you that reads instead of performs. That thinks instead of optimizes. That has a long conversation over tea instead of a short one at a rooftop event with someone you half know. For people whose inner life is significantly richer than their outer presentation, and that is more people than you would imagine, this return to self doesn't feel like retreat. It feels like arrival. Like you've been traveling for 6 months, and you just got home, and you didn't realize how much you missed it until you walked through the door. The synthesis. What this all means. Let me bring this home. We've covered a lot of ground. Physiology, clinical psychology, neuroscience, sensory processing, cognitive style, identity. But what I want you to leave with is something simpler than all of that. If you prefer winter, if you've spent years feeling vaguely out of step with the world's enthusiasm for the summer months, you have not been experiencing a flaw. You've been experiencing a mismatch between your nervous system and an environment calibrated for a different one. Between your social appetite and a culture that has decided that more socializing in more daylight is always better. Between your cognitive style and a season that rewards a completely different way of processing this world. And for a few months every year, when the light softens and the days shorten, and the temperature finally drops to something your body recognizes as right, the mismatch resolves. The world reorganizes itself around your nervous system for once. That's not a small thing. That's not a quirk. That's not something that needs explaining or apologizing for or justifying to people whose faces do that thing when you tell them. The gray skies are not a problem to be solved. They never were. If this video felt less like information and more like recognition, if at some point you thought that's exactly it, that's the thing I couldn't say. I want to hear about it. Drop a comment below. Tell me which part landed. Tell me what sentence you've been carrying without knowing it had words. Because the best conversations I have are in the comment section. Not because I'm trying to build engagement, but because the people who watch this far are genuinely the most interesting, most self-aware humans I've come across. And they deserve to talk to each other. If you want to go deeper on how your nervous system shapes your experience, why you feel more, notice more, process more than people around you seem to, the video right here is exactly where you go next. I'll see you there.